Today the format is slightly different, so we are mixing things up a bit because the topic is spicy. We are kind of spicing this up. So we discuss romance, and the way we're going to do it is, first of all, there's going to be important spoilers. So if you haven't read The Fountainhead, I mean, if you're really eager to listen to Andy talking about sex, which is probably fun, you can stick around. But just to let you know, there's going to be some spoilers. So what we're going to do is Andy's going to give a very quick kind of intro about romance in The Fountainhead, and then we're going to go through 8 different scenes, including that scene that everyone is talking about when they talk about sex in The Fountainhead, and we're going to analyze them. So instead of having an introduction and a Q&A, people who want can jump in every single scene. So the first scene, if someone has a comment, after Andy's comments, you can jump in, then we go to the second scene, and that's how we're gonna roll tonight. So, Andy, give us some opening remarks, and then we'll start with the scenes.
First of all, I want to thank Razi and Nikos for doing this. It's a great topic. The Fountainhead's my all-time favorite book. Howard Roark's my all-time favorite hero. And I want to say something on behalf of Dominique Francon, because a lot of people read The Fountainhead and don't like her. In fact, you know, I've used The Fountainhead as the main text in all my ethics classes for 30 years. And I've had students, I met one woman, who's an adult, you know, in an evening class. She wouldn't even refer to Dominique by name. She just called her psycho broad, you know? Every time she referred to Dominique, she called her psycho broad. And I say, hey, wait a minute, you know, I fell in love with psycho broad when I was 16 years old, and I still, you know, and I still love her. She's still my favorite Ayn Rand heroine. So, you know, one thing about Dominique, and then we can get to the questions, Nikos. Notice she meets Roark. Why Dominique is such an exquisite character. She meets Roark at the lowest ebb of his career. He's in a granite quarry. He's just a garden variety worker, as far as she knows. The foreman tells her there's a bunch of, you know, some of these guys are ex-cons. As far as she knows, he might be an ex-convict. But she falls in love with Roark, and Ayn Rand believes in love at first sight, right? It's in every one of her novels. She falls in love with Roark the first time she sees him at the lowest ebb of his career, and her soul belongs to Roark from that day until the day she dies. She recognizes that Roark is the epitome of strength, as she puts it. And it's not just his hands that break rocks and everything. There's a lot of, you know, muscular guys there who could do that. When she talks about that his face is the epitome of strength. He has the face of a god, she tells Keating. She's talking about moral strength, right? I mean, as far as she knows, he might be an ex-con, but she knows better. At some subconscious level, she knows this guy is a moral paragon. There's moral strength. It just pours out of his face, his eyes, his posture, his body language, his movements, and everything. And that's what makes Dominique so exquisite. She recognizes at the lowest point of Roark's career who he is, that other people can't recognize even after he's designed the Enright House, you know, or the Weinenfeld. So that's what makes Dominique, and other things about Dominique that make her such a great heroine. So that's what I want to say by way of introduction.
Good. So we'll start our scene analysis with actually not a scene with Roark and Dominique. So some background here. I was checking the other day which are Jordan Peterson's most viewed videos, and actually there are his various videos where he talks about nice guys and why nice guys finish last, and why nice guys don't get it with women and all that stuff. And if you add all his nice guys videos, the viewing together, it gives us something like 13, 14 million viewers, which is unbelievable, okay? So here we see some scenes in The Fountainhead where someone plays the nice guy game, trying to sleep with Dominique or win her heart. And we start with Peter Keating. For those of you who have the British version, it's page 178. I'm just gonna read a couple of lines that will give you the atmosphere. So it's Keating returning home with Dominique, and this is his lines. Dominique, Dominique, I love you. Don't laugh at me. Please don't laugh. My whole life, anything you wish. Don't you know how beautiful you are? Dominique, I love you. And then later he says, again, I love you, Dominique. I'm crazy about you. Give me a chance. If there's no one else, why not? You learn to love me because I understand you. I'll be patient. I'll make you happy. And while I was reading it, I put on the side, ew. And there's also another scene where is this guy who is a poet, apparently, and Ayn Rand describes him as, in page 212, it's when Dominique is in her summer house, and Rand describes him, the eminent young poet. He was pale and slender. He had a soft, sensitive mouth and eyes hurt by the whole universe. He also makes a move to Dominique, and Dominique is basically disgusted and says, go away, and she leaves the car. So Andy, why can't the nice guys, and we have to make clear, when we say nice guys, we call it as it's kind of discussed nowadays in like popular psychology. We don't mean good guys. It's the nice guys is like the whole persona. Why don't nice guys earn the heart or the interest or the desire of Dominique?
Well, I would start out with that by saying we need to check our premises. There's nothing nice about Peter Keating. He's a bastard. But I mean, we need a definition for nice guys. I mean, what does that mean? To me, someone who's a nice guy in part means that he's got some strength of character, that he's a good person, that he's, you know, he's not going to stab you in the back. Or Roark's the nice guy in that regard. He's the one who's got the strength of character. There's Leo DeRocha, who is not a nice guy. He was a real mean SOB, was a manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team, and his rival, the New York Giants, Mel Ott, was a really nice guy. And DeRocha said nice. The Dodgers, managed by this real nasty guy, were in first place, and the Giants, managed by this real nice guy, were in last place. And Leo DeRocha uttered to a bunch of baseball writers, nice guys finish last, which became an immortal, line in Americana. Anyhow, to me, nice guys means somebody who's good. They have a moral character. Notice about Keating. This is what makes Dominique so exquisite. She's so sensitive. Remember who her father is. Guy Frank. She grows up with this guy. He's classy, but he's a phony. He's fraudulent. He's not a good architect. Never mind a great one. And he becomes the most commercially successful and prestigious architect in the country by means of schmoozing. He's very good at networking. Matching his ties with his socks and his wines with his meals, and he's very good. At networking and at winning people to like him, again, getting people to like him. Whereas Henry Cameron, of course, is the great architect of that day, and he's a guy who regards diplomacy as a respiratory element. I mean, he's got no social skills, whatever. Dominique recognizes, though, how first-handed she is. That's a phony, and Cameron's a great architect. Even though society venerates my dad, and Cameron's now an alcoholic husband. And by the way, not just that, but Guy Frank is her dad, and she still recognizes the truth about it. Same with Roark and Keating. Dominique sees it right away. Roark may not have the social acclaim that Keating gets, but Roark is the great architect, and Roark is a moral paragon. He won't kiss up. He won't play the game. He's not relying on networking. He's relying on being a great architect. Keating's a kiss up. He's a suck up. He's got no moral backbone, and he's a manipulator. He's dishonest. And she doesn't know the specifics of some of the things he does, but the people he stabs in the back on his way up the ladder, she senses that in him. He's completely untrustworthy. That's why she says to him, when he proposes to her, she says to him, Peter, if I ever do something really horrible in my life that I need to punish myself for, I will marry you. So, wow. But, that's justice. Keating deserves it. Dominique's commitment to morality here. And if niceness just means that you have social etiquette but no moral character, then it's of limited value, right? But if niceness includes being a good guy, having a moral character that supersedes social etiquette, it's good to have etiquette, but it's much better to be ethical. You know, if niceness includes character, then Roark's the nice guy here. He's the good guy. You know, Keating's a dishonest, backstabbing, manipulative lowlife, and Dominique sees through him. That's what makes us so again, what makes us so great. She's first-handed. She's not taken in by society's acclaim for Keating.
So yeah, I'm glad you made this distinction. That's why I said when we say nice guy, we mean it in the way it's today described in pop psychology, which basically means someone who uses this kind of, as you said, good manners, not because they're original and kind of he's benevolent, but it's the only way he knows to communicate and connect with people. And Jordan Peterson describes him as this, you know, as someone who is, you know, harmless, so to speak, which again.
But Keating's not harmless.
Yeah.
I mean, he sees that.
Yeah. But what about the sensitive, hurt by the whole universe, pale and slender author? Why doesn't Dominique respond?
First of all, she's in love with Roark, right? Does that come before or after her meeting with Roark?
It's literally 4 pages after she has seen Roark for the first time.
Okay, but even if she hadn't met Roark, presumably she would not be attracted to this guy. Now, we have very little information about him, so we have to extrapolate. But his eyes are hurt by the whole universe. You know, that sounds like, you know, part of Ayn Rand's satire. It is a kind of brutal satire on modernist art, you know, and in this case, modernist poetry. And the idea here, you know, one is, you know, in modernist literature, there's no heroes. It's almost all anti-heroes, and his eyes are hurt by the whole universe. You know, Ayn Rand would be attracted to, and Dominique Francon and Dagny Taggart, her heroines, Kira Ogbanova, they're attracted to, what's that expression from NASA? You know, from the National Aeronautical and Space Administration, you're a steely-eyed missile man, right? You mean, I love that expression. You're a steely-eyed missile man. You know, you're a real rocket scientist. You know, that's, you know, those kind of hard eyes, tough eyes, which aren't morally brutal. They're not victimizing innocent people. It's the toughness, that mental toughness of facing reality for what it is, and then taking remedial action in a tough situation. Not have eyes that are hurt by the entire universe. What a perfect expression of the modernist anti-hero mentality. That kind of woe is me attitude. Human beings are helpless. It's a horrible world. We're all doomed to failure. No values can be achieved. It's a sign of moral weakness. That's why Dominique's repelled by it.
Good. So I think it becomes clear why Dominique is not attracted to these guys like Keating and the poor author. Yeah. Although the poor poet seems to be a nice guy, but tough luck. Have we got any comment or questions in this first scene? Otherwise, I will proceed to the scene where Dominique meets Roark for the first time.
Dominique wants a steely-eyed missile man.
So, speaking about how did you call him, that guy? Page 207, for those of you who have the British edition. Again, I'm just going to read a couple of lines so that you get the point. So Roark is in the quarry and Dominique meets him, and this is how this is described. Now we see the feelings in the heart of Dominique. She knew it was the most beautiful face she would ever see, because it was the abstraction of strength made visible. She felt a convulsion of anger, of protest, of resistance, and of pleasure. He stood looking up at her. It was not a glance, but an act of ownership. And then in the next page, he sustained, Roark, the insolence of looking straight at her. He would not move. He would not grant the concession of turning away, of acknowledging that he had no right to look at her in such manner. So this is like a blood affair. This is like Roark saying, I'm tougher than you. And Dominique likes it. He totally buys it. So explain us, Andy, what does he see there? Because she, as you said, she has seen him for like 1 minute. And within this, probably even less than, within that 1 minute, there's all this plethora of emotions that were not waking up inside her for, I don't know, decades. I don't remember how old she is. She's in her early 20s or something.
Early 20s.
What made her have these feelings, and why is Roark playing it tough? It's like, You're going to be the first to look our way, not me.
I love this stuff. And I agree with Ayn Rand. I think love at first sight is a real phenomenon. And I think it happens in the real world, that the subconscious and the emotional life is picking up things about a person that the conscious mind doesn't know yet. Now we're fallible beings, so we could make errors. We have to unpack what that feeling is, but I think it is real. And Dominique's right in this case. She's not mistaken. But let's set the scene. Dominique's daddy owns this place. You know, he owns the granite quarry. He owns that whole, surrounding area. She's the belle of the manor. She's Dominique Francon. I mean, not just she's this stunning, beautiful woman, but she owns this place. She can hire and fire. She can get these guys hired and fired, at the snap of a finger. She's like Scarlett O'Hara, on Tara, from Gone with the Wind. She's the big boss lady. Roark's just a worker in a granite quarry. He may be a convict as far as she knows. Well, I think her emotional life immediately knows better. She goes around, flaunting her beauty and her name and her dominance in this situation. And everybody, whatever you say, Miss Francon, they don't want to get her angry. All she's got to do is go to daddy and have this guy fired, So they all kowtow before. Plus, she's stunningly beautiful. So I mean, the guys are like struck speechless by it. And here's Roark, who doesn't need her. He's so independent. He has no need of her approval. But I think what's often overlooked in this scene, Dominique's smitten right away. No doubt she's in love with him here in that first minute, and she is for the rest of her life. She recognizes who he is, and that's part of what makes her so special. But I think Roark is struck by her too, and it's not just her beauty. She is beautiful, but there's something about her. She's haughty. What's the French word? Hauteur. There's a haughtiness and an arrogance about her that Roark's looking at her and he sees something in her, I think, like she sees in him. It's more than just beauty and flaunting who she is and how important she is. He senses some substance there. It's not just surface, BS. There's some substance to this woman, and I think he's drawn to her. So far as we know, Roark's never had a romantic relationship. Ayn Rand cut the romantic relationship with Besta Dunning, and we know, as far as we know, Dominique Francon never has. And this is like love at first sight, but Dominique is not gonna romantically get involved with, much less in the sexual act of surrender to somebody who's, what does she say at some point in the novel? For me, it's all or nothing. I can't respond to the halfway, the almost, the not quite, the in between. It's all or nothing. He's got to be the superlative manly being who's going to overpower her will. That's who he's got to be to win her. And
so that's why she's testing him in a way.
I think Roark senses that about her right away. That arrogance about her. That she wants a man, but it's got to be somebody who's really a man. His strength of body is not enough. There's a lot of guys who could do that, but his strength of will, he's gonna have.
When I was writing my book on tribalism, there's a chapter on the manosphere, and I had to kind of learn the lingo of that subgroup of the internet, and they have a phrase called sit test that they try to throw all the time, that women are going to sit test you, and if you don't pass the test, then you're not good. I think the whole relationship between Dominique and Howard Roark, to use this kind of popular phrase in some corners of the internet, is a whole test. That she wants to see if he's good enough, if he's strong enough.
Yeah, but as long as we understand it, it's not a conscious. It's not something Dominique's consciously thinking.
That's what I'm getting. If it's not conscious,
emotional level.
If it's not conscious, then does this tell us something? Because the problem I have with a lot of kind of the people who try to to explain the dynamics between men and women, and that's why I've put them on the tribal category, is this determinism that says that all women do that because women can't help it, and men can help it. Men are like that, women are like that. So here we have, in this book, we have two archetypes, right? Or at least a lot of people see them. Roark as an archetype of this kind of masculinity, Dominique as this kind of archetype of femininity. Do you believe in archetypes, and are there gender or sexual archetypes?
You know, before I answer that, I just point out I'm a writer and a philosopher. A lot of this goes into the field of psychology, where I would just be speculating. You know, as on the other hand, you know, I'm 60-something years old, and I've had a few relationships with women in my life. So I think I've learned something. First, we have to say people are individuals. So I mean, any generalizations we make won't hold. These are empirical generalizations. They're not principles. There will be exceptions, right? But I think as an empirical generalization, yeah, I think there's masculine and feminine characteristics. Dominique, we need to be clear. I think what most draws her to Roark is, you know, that the personification of strength. Or this is the abstraction of strength. And later she tells Kiki Holcomb that he's got the face of a god, which nobody else sees. She sees it. To her, it's self-evident. Nobody else can even see it. To her, it's obvious. And that's mostly overwhelmingly moral strength. The physical strength is part of it. She's thinking about the guy who breaks rocks with his hands. You know, that's part of manliness, is the physical strength that as a very feminine, you know, woman she's attracted to. But that, you know, she's not gonna get in a relationship or even, you know, a short-term one with some brutal guy she meets in a bar. You know, it's the moral strength that Roark embodies here, and he is going to encounter an enormous amount of resistance with this woman for various complicated reasons. She's desperately in love with him, and she wants to make love to him in the worst way, but she's going to try and bash him over the head with a lamp when he finally, you know, approaches her. She's going to resist. He's going to have to overcome her resistance. He needs to understand, because generally if a woman resists, that means no, and you stop. You're a gentleman, you have moral principles. She's resisting, you stop. Roark senses here that the resistance is not no. The resistance is overpower me. And there's a lot of evidence in the text to support that. Ayn Rand is showing us that.
So now we get to that scene, which is perhaps the most controversial scene in the Fountainhead. And I would say, together with the tunnel scene in Atlas, probably the most controversial scenes on the whole of the fiction of the novels of Ayn Rand. And it's the so-called rape scene. And I say so-called because we know from the author that this is actually not a rape scene.
We know from the text it's not a rape scene.
Yeah, we know, but from the text. But here's the question. So this is a scene where Roark goes to her room and they have passionate sex. But if you're not in the head of Dominique, it looks like that Dominique resists. And not only that, later she tells herself, maybe because she scorns herself, or you'll tell us why, she says herself, oh, I was raped. So even in her, she wants to tell herself that this was actually without her will. So, and I have to say, usually when I talk about the scene, what I say to people is, this is a don't try this at home scene. Let's make this clear.
If a woman resists, you stop.
Why is it then that this scene is not rape, though?
Well, this is complex. There's several components to this. First, we have to show how eager Dominique is. Eager is not even the right word. Desperate to have sex with Roark. Then we have to show, and we have to explain. Well, if she's so desperate to have sex with him, why does she resist? So let's set the scene here. So Dominique, she's in love with Roark. Where she goes, she's wooing Roark. She's the aggressor through this whole scene. So she goes home and she cracks the marble, right? You know, because she wants Roark to come, set the marble. And Roark comes in and he sees right away with this. He takes the chisel, bam. He said, no, now it's really cracked, right? Needs to be replaced. And so he orders the marble from Alabama or someplace, and it takes, I don't remember the details, but it takes like a week to come. And we're in Dominique's head, and she's pacing. I mean, she's beside herself. She just can't wait for that marble to get here so that she could get Roark to come in, you know, and set the marble. And anybody who's ever been deeply in love with somebody, just, you know, desperately wants to make love, you see the sexual tension here. You know, Dominique can't sleep. She's so desperate, you know, for this kind of sexual relation with Roark. So, you know, the marble finally arrives, and Roark doesn't come to set. He sends Pasquale or Cini, whatever, you know, and Dominique is just, you know, she's crushed. And she meets him on the path, you know, later on. And what does she have on hand? A riding crop, you know? A whip, you know, and she says to Roark, why didn't you come set the marble? And Roark says, well, I didn't think it made any difference who set the marble. But it did, didn't it, Miss Francon? He says to, and she thinks, and she smacks him across the face and rides off like the lunatic that she is. And, you know, people give messages to each other in other ways than just the verbal, right? And Dominique has delivered a message here, loud and clear. You bastard, you know, I want you in the worst way, and you keep me waiting, you know, and she's delivered a message. And Roark understands the message. Notice, he still keeps her waiting. It's a few days later before he finally comes to her bedroom. And the way Ayn Rand describes that scene, you know, that Dominique's in her bedroom, she thinks she'll try to sleep. Try. She didn't say she'll go to sleep. She'll try to sleep. You know how hard that is with anyone who suffered from sexual tension. She puts a perfume on her, you know, that she feels it's cool, you know, against her skin because she's so, you know, so overheated. So, I mean, okay. So Roark finally comes, and here's the big question. So, you know, Dominique's gone to a lot of trouble to get Roark in her bedroom, breaking marble and hitting him with a whip. And, you know, Dominique's not normally a violent person, smacking him with a whip and everything. You know, she's gone to a lot of trouble to get him in her bedroom. She has him now exactly where she wants him, so, and she resists. Well, I mean, how does that make sense? We got to come back to that in just a second. But first, after this violent sex scene, notice again, there's nothing by accident in an Ayn Rand novel. If something's in an Ayn Rand novel, it's like a Shakespearean place. They're on purpose. After Roark leaves, Dominique crawls into the bathroom. Right, she runs the bath. You know, she's gonna take a bath. And Ayn Rand knows that rape victims, you know, rape is a horrible crime. Right, it's a woman's violation of her body. Rape victims very often want to bathe and bathe and bathe, as if with soap and water they can wash away, you know, the foul touch of the intruder. Dominique runs the bath, and then she refuses to get in. Rather than get in the bathtub, Ayn Rand says she slept all night on the cold tiles of the bathroom floor. Now again, that's telling us something, because Ayn Rand also knows that if a woman is deeply in love with a man, the last thing she's going to do is wash away his touch, you know. And Dominique would rip your face off if you tried to get her in that tub at that point. You're going to get her in that tub, for, you know, for love, money, or a 16-inch gun, as they say. And then, you know, the first time in New York when they make love, you know, the second time, but the first time in New York, when Ayn Rand says that Dominique gave herself to Roark in a surrender more violent than her struggle. Wow, that's good writing, that's good stuff. But anyhow, why the struggle in that case? Ayn Rand has made very clear Dominique is deeply in love, desperately in love with Roark. That's incontrovertible. The evidence is just overwhelming. Furthermore, I mean, she's in love with Roark for the rest of her life. Are we to suspect that women fall in love with rapists? I don't think so. Anyhow, so why she resist? And I think there are several. The question, of course, is since we see how deeply in love Dominique is with Roark, yeah, you're finally here. You're not keep me waiting anymore. Let's go. No, she picks up a lamp and tries to crack him over, over the head with it. First of all, I think, part of this for Dominique is the experience of being overpowered. She wants to be. This is not my idea of making love, by the way. I like a woman who it's all very gentle and loving, and I don't have to overpower her, But then Dominique wants to be overpowered. She wants to be dominated by the manly. She wants to surrender to somebody, not just who's physically stronger than her, that's obvious, but whose strength of will is going to overpower her. And I think there's a deeper level of meaning here. Dominique believes, as we find out, that the world is a corrupt place. Who becomes successful? Guy Francon, who's a phony, Peter Keating, who's a fraud, who's lionized as a great humanitarian, Ellsworth Toohey, who she knows is evil, who makes the big journalistic empire, Gail Wynand, who's a sellout, although she finds out later on that he's much better than that. And what happens to Henry Cameron, the great architect? He's rejected and reduced to becoming an alcoholic. What's going to happen to Roark? Same thing going to happen to Cameron, which is why she joins forces with Toohey later on in an anti-Roark alliance. Right? Toohey's goal is to commit spiritual murder. Dominique's goal is to commit spiritual mercy killing. But the point is, Roark has no chance in this world. He's going to be crushed in a long, drawn-out, painful struggle. Dominique can't possibly know that when she first meets him, but she senses it. This man is a moral giant. He's got no chance in this world. He's going to be crushed. And she tells him later on, she says, I can't be here to watch. I can't be part of this. It's too painful to her. The only type of persons or things she can worship are going to be crushed. I can't let myself get emotionally involved with you, but I'm desperate to. But I can't allow it. But I'm desperate to. But I can't allow it. And Roark's going to have to overcome that. He's going to have to overcome that resistance on the first night, and he's going to have to overcome it for years to win her hand.
So is this malevolent universe premise that there can be even such nice thing as love, that in retrospect she perceived this scene as rape, or she tells herself, "Oh, I was raped."
Yeah, let me say something here. Nick goes, "You're right. She likes to think of it as rape. She likes to tell herself. She likes to tell people she was raped. She likes to think of it that way. But actions speak louder than words. What Ayn Rand shows us, she won't get in that bathtub. Ayn Rand's showing us, no, this is not.
Actually, she doesn't say to people. She imagines herself saying it to people. So
she tells Wynand.
Oh, yeah. But she doesn't name him. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Now, Razi makes a very important point. Andy is the person to be interviewed about the so-called rape scene because he has written a whole chapter on this scene on a book which is called Essays on Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead. It's a whole series with essays on different Ayn Rand novels, and I would say that's the go-to place for this scene. And Daniel makes a comment which is correct. He says, she wanted it, Roark knew that she wanted it, she knew that Roark knew, and this goes ad infinitum.
Yeah, we have to be careful here, because we don't want to come to the conclusion that if we think a woman wants sex and then she resists, or she really does want sex, and we move ahead. Or if a woman resists, you're a gentleman, you stop. Period. That means no. You don't force her into sex. But the relationship between Roark and Dominique is very special. They all through the book, you see them communicating in ways that don't need the verbal. As Ayn Rand says, they finish each other's sentences. They can pick up like as though it was in the middle of a conversation, because they know each other's souls and minds so well. And so Roark, for the moral paragon he is, has to be very certain that this is what Dominique actually wants, and he is. She set this whole thing up to have.
And that's why our final word on that scene is, as I said at the beginning, don't try this at home.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, talking about the dynamic between Roark and Dominique, and as you said, they can understand each other, and actually that's why they never say hi when they meet each other, because I think Dominique says, you wouldn't say hi to yourself in the mirror, so why would I say hi to Roark? There's a very interesting scene later.
There's beautiful, right? The emotional intimacy they share is just beautiful.
There's a nice scene later when, in one of the parts of their on-off relationship, one of the on parts, before she marries Wynand, they have this interesting dialogue, and it's the first time that Roark kind of lets go a bit and expresses his feelings, and here's what he says. So he says, of course I need you. I go insane when I see you. You can do almost anything you wish with me. Is that what you want to hear? Almost, Dominique. And the things you couldn't make me do, you could put me through hell if you demanded them, and I had to refuse you. Does that please you? Why you want to know whether you own me? It's so simple. Of course you do. You own all of me that can be owned. And I want to focus on this phrase, Andy. So Roark tells her, you own everything that can be owned of me. What does Roark mean here? What is the thing that can be owned? And what is the thing that cannot be owned?
That's a very beautiful scene between, a man and a woman who's just so deeply in love and who understand each other at such a deep level. It's a beautiful thing. This is real love. Well, when Roark says, that what you can't demand of me, you can put me through hell if you did. He said, if you demanded me to give up architecture, and, in a way she does. She says, you give up architecture, we'll get married, you work in a shoe store or something, and Roark has to try not to laugh at her because he knows she's serious. And he says to her something like, Dominique, if I gave up architecture, I'd be so miserable, and you'd be so miserable. You'd beg me to go back to architecture in about 3 days. But that's the love of architecture is core. It's fundamental. It's essential. He wouldn't give that up for anybody or anything. So if Dominique demanded it, that would be the end of their relationship. But it would put her through hell, because losing Dominique forever would be enormously painful. But you can't give up who you are in order to win somebody else. You have to win somebody else based on who you are. That's what he's saying to her. Anything else that you ask of me, is what a man often say to a woman when he's really in love with her. Anything you want, you only need to ask me once. Anything else? You want to live here, we'll live there. You want to dress like this, we'll dress like this. You want to have kids, we'll have kids. We don't have kids, we don't have kids. I'll go along with you on anything you want, but I can't do it. That's just not. It's not possible to me. I won't be me.
And going back to this theory of the tests, I think if Roark would say, okay, I'll give up architecture, I believe Dominique wouldn't be so in love with him anymore.
Exactly. You would not love me. You wouldn't want me. You'd beg me to go back to architecture in about 3 days. I mean, Roark would be completely miserable. Dominique would see the man she loves is miserable, and miserable because of her demand. She wouldn't necessarily be miserable. Yeah, it would never work. Some things. When you're deeply in love with somebody, and Gail Wynand says at some point in the story that love is the exception making, that you do things for the person you love that you wouldn't do for others, and it's not a sacrifice because they mean that much. Roark, I think what he's saying here is, I'll do anything for you, Dominique, but that I can't do. Anything but one. That I can't do.
And now we find ourselves to the final night of Roark and Dominique before she marries, I think just before she marries Wynand. But anyway, we're at page 388, where we probably see one of the most famous quotes of the book. So Roark says some beautiful words. I love you as selfishly as the fact that I exist, as selfishly as my lungs breathe air. I breathe for my own necessity, for the fuel of my body, for my survival. I've given you not my sacrifice or my pity, but my ego and my naked need. This is the only way you can wish to be loved. This is the only way I can want you to love me. And then later, to say I love you, one must know first how to say the I. So before you comment on this famous quote, the question is, why can't he have Dominique there and then? Why they love each other so much? So why doesn't he say, wait, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do something horrible. Don't do this. Why does he let it go?
This is right before Keating marries, Dominique marries Keating, right?
Yeah, it's before she marries Keating. Yes, not before she marries Winant.
That's important. That's right after the started Temple trial. And there's a couple of things about that. The started Temple trial is Dominique's worst nightmare come true. Roark built this temple, this beautiful, this magnificent temple, and society, they're condemning him, and they're ostracizing him. They're bringing him to trial. They're gonna take the building. They're gonna tear it down. They're gonna turn it into a orphanage for subnormal children. This is Dominique's worst nightmare come true. He gives this genius and hero that she loves, has bestowed on humanity this gift, this beautiful gift, and they revile it, and they spit in his face. They call him names, and he's drag him into court and everything. This is agony for Dominique. We need to understand, the hero and the hero's great achievements are being reviled and torn down by a society. What does Dominique say? We have to acknowledge that let's tear it down by all means, but let's say, we're not doing anything noble. Let's acknowledge we're a bunch of moles or something, and we object to mountains, or something like that is our metaphor. Anyway, this is her worst nightmare come true. You see Dominique, in effect, saying to herself, what an idiot I am. I knew this was going to happen to Roark. I knew it was going to end like this, and I still let myself get involved, romantically with him. Anyway, there's a knife wound in Dominique's heart. Well, what did she say to Keating earlier? If I ever do something horrible, that I need to atone for, I'll marry you. Why did she marry Keating? Because what causes her that agony is her hero-worshipping attitude in a world filled with iconoclasts, in a world filled of anti-heroes and hero haters. Well, maybe by being married to Peter Keating, who's as low, low-life as you can find, maybe that'll kill off that spirit of mine. Maybe that'll kill off that hero-worshipping attitude of mine, and will anesthetize me to the pain. That's why she marries Keating, and that's why Roark can't say that, forget all that, Dominique, marry me and we'll live happily ever after. She's still too tied to this malevolent universe or malevolent society premise that Roark's going to be destroyed, and it's just going to be unendurable agony for her to live through.
Makes sense. So before we get to the scene, which in my opinion includes the most romantic line in the history of world literature, and I'm 100% serious, let's go a bit counterclimactic and go to the Peter and Katie relationship. Now, I have some disagreements here with some objectivist scholars, maybe also with you. I don't remember what's your take on it. Was it you who said that actually the only thing that Peter Keating really wanted was Katie, and he can't pursue her?
Keating says, he said, the only thing I ever really wanted to do was marry you.
But does he really want to marry her? And here's the scene I want to focus on. So the scene is in pages 148 and 149. And it's one of these EU kind of scenes, these awkward, difficult to watch scenes. So the scene is when Katie visits Keating. His mother is in front, so they don't even have the privacy, the intimate privacy of the couple. And she basically says that, oh, I'm happy. So Keating asks the usual thing, what do you want? Oh, it's nothing. What do you want? It's nothing. And then she says that she wants to get married. And Keating doesn't even, so basically she proposes to him. And then there's this horrible dialogue where Keating says, it's basically like, okay, yeah, whatever. He says, look, Katie, we'll get the license tomorrow morning and then we'll get married at once. Anywhere you wish. Let's, Peter, she whispered. You really don't mind? I have no real reasons, but I want to. Like, pathetic. So these are two supposed lovers, and the one is kind of thrown, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, we could marry, yeah, if you don't mind, and the mother is there. It's like, I never understood, is Keating really in love with Katie?
He is.
And why is he acting so pathetically?
Because he's pathetic. But let's take it one step at a time. Love is the exception making, right? You'll do for the person you love what you wouldn't do for others, and it won't be a sacrifice. Keating never hears Winan say that, but in a way he's living it out. I think that the important scene there is when Keating realizes that Ellsworth Toohey, the up-and-coming power broker in the field of architecture, and he wants to meet Toohey in the worst way. And Katie says to him, I'll introduce you to Uncle Ellsworth myself. And you remember Keating's response? He said, no, Katie. He said, not through you. He said, I use people. I manipulate people. I don't want to do that to you. He wants to keep that relationship clean. Whatever he does about it later on. This relationship's special to him. Catherine Halsey is special to him. He wants to keep it clean. He wants to meet Toohey the worst way, but he's not going to do it through Catherine. That's important. It shows us, the true feelings he has for her. Well, why doesn't he marry her then? Well, I mean, it's the same reason why he didn't become a painter. Why is he married Dominique Francon instead of Catherine Halsey? Is the same reason why he became an architect instead of a painter. His mother tells him, well, painters, that's bohemian, and they're gonna starve and everything. Whereas architects wear three-piece suits, and they have offices on Park Avenue, and they draw their client base off the social register, and and everything. Architects impress people, to put it simply. Same thing with Dominique and Katie. Dominique impresses people. When Keating walks into the Four Seasons, with Dominique Francon on his arm, it's like walking in with Angelina Jolie. A heads turn. Ooh, but you walk into some five-star restaurant like the Four Seasons or someplace like that, and with Catherine Halsey on your arm, nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to care. It doesn't impress anybody. It's for those few moments of ooh, from the crowd that Peter Keating sells his values. And Ayn Rand's showing us here, it's not a good trade.
So what does he see in Katie? Because there's not that much to celebrate in that character. I mean, let's be honest.
First of all, she's honest, she's sweet, she's pretty, and she loves him. And I mean, she loves him sincerely. He's the one first-handed value in her life. And, that's what he sees in her. And if he married Catherine Halsey, he'd be marrying the woman he loves, not the woman that impresses other people, and marrying a woman who loves him. And so I think that would be after he surrenders painting for architecture, his love for Catherine is the one last first-handed value in his soul, which is why Toohey goes to such lengths to get him to give up Catherine Halsey, and marry Dominique, because he kills two birds with one stone. He empties Catherine Halsey's soul of its only personal value, and he thereby empties Peter Keating's soul of its last personal value. And they are now valueless, rudderless, directionless, and completely open to him controlling their lives entirely.
Right. That's a fair point. And to be fair, my negative view on Katie has most to do with her transformation after Toohey breaks her. Yeah,
Toohey breaks her. That was seen of all the evil things Toohey does. What he does to that girl, to his niece, is maybe the single most evil thing he does in novel. You want to just choke him at that, what he does to that girl.
So now we will move to the scene that, as I said, I consider the most romantic scene in the history of literature, and that's maybe because I have still remnants of a bit of not malevolent universe premise, but I like the idea of unrequited love. I don't know, maybe it does something personal to me.
Well, not when you're the person who's on the the painful end of it.
Yeah, that's why I love Casablanca, to be honest. So we are on page 522, and there's this dialogue between Gail Wynand and Dominique Francon. And I will, again, read a couple of lines that are highlights. Not in continuum, but some parts that I've picked. So they have this discussion. They're in a romantic situation. So Dominic has realized that Gail is not this horrible person. So she sees some value in him, but she can't give herself to him. But because obviously we know she loves someone else, and also, but they're like friends. She sees him as a friend and she appreciates him. But Gail is crazy about him. So here's the dialogue. Dominic, being very sincere, opens the tells to him, quote, "I don't love you, Gail. I can't care even about that," Gail says. And then he continues, "I love you, Dominique. I love you so much that nothing can matter to me. Not even you. Can you understand that? Only my love, not your answer." And then later he says, "When one reaches that stage, it's not the object that matters. It's the desire. Not you, but I. The ability to desire like that. Nothing less is worth feeling or honoring." So, Andy, the question is, what is happening here? And am I right in considering this as a profoundly romantic scene?
Yeah, it's wow. I mean, as I understand it, there's the good news and the bad news here, and to Wynand, obviously, the good news enormously trumps the bad news. The capacity to love like that, which means to value, and Wynand, we see Wynand at his best here. He doesn't, he doesn't experience this kind of romantic passion for one of the Fishtown hussies, if I can quote Sylvester Stallone here, who might be, very attractive and everything, but, doesn't have Dominique's soul. No, he experiences this for Dominique Francon, whose physical beauty is matched by her spiritual beauty, her hero worship, her idealism. This is what makes Dominique so exquisite, and why I fell in love with her at age 16, and why I still love her. It's her idealism, her 100% across the board commitment to human beings at their highest and best. She can't accept anything other than, than human beings at their highest and best. So this is why she loves Roark. This is why she loves Roark's buildings. It's why she loved that Greek statuette that she destroyed, and why she tries to destroy the things she loves, because there's no world for them. She wants them to die quickly and painlessly at her hand, rather than slowly and agonizingly at the hands of a society that can't appreciate it. This is the woman, Wynand falls in love with, so deeply in love with, the by far, the most beautiful in every way, spiritually even more than physically, woman in the universe of this story. This tells us something about Wynand. This is the same thing, similar to the beautiful masterpieces in his private art gallery. What he loves, same thing she loves, and why they both love Roark, human beings at their highest and best. So, I mean, this tells us something very beautiful about Wynand's soul, even despite all the terrible things he's done in his life. Then the other part to it, that Dominique doesn't feel the same way. She loves him, but not the way she loves Roark. So he can't have it fulfilled. All I could say about that, Nikos, is Wynand's a better man than I am. If that's the ad, I can't fathom. He doesn't seem to be in a lot of pain over this. Unrequited love, no matter how ennobling it is, in the spiritual part of the lover, if it's unrequited, to me, it would be painful. But it doesn't.
Yeah, you are right. But maybe not so much, not only unrequited, but it's the fact that you have experienced it, even if it happened and then it went wrong. The fact remains that you have lived it, you have experienced it. So you have experienced something that others haven't. So there are many people who say, I've never experienced that.
Better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Isn't that a line from Shakespeare somewhere?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's a beautiful line. It's a true line. If that was the only choice, love and lose the love, or never taste it, then I'm gonna 100 times out of 100, I'm gonna taste, even though there's heartbreak involved with it. Otherwise, you haven't lived. But I think you're right, Nikos. But also, this is Wynand at his highest and best. And when you have this kind of exalted experience, it ennobles you. It makes you a better person. And I think the self-esteem And Winans done a lot of things in his life that he can legitimately be ashamed of. And I think he is. But this is something he can be proud of.
Good. And Joe says this scene is desperately tragic, and I agree. But I would say it's first of all a romantic scene. That for me, it's always a romantic and secondly a tragic scene. But anyway, I get the point that it is indeed tragic. So let's move to another very interesting line, which is also one of my favorite lines. So now Roark has become friends with Winans, and they start discussing romance. Or no, actually, Winans tries to understand him. And we have this very interesting dialogue. Winans asked, "Howard, have you ever been in love?" Roark turned to look straight at him and answered quietly, "I still am. But when you walk through a building, what you feel is greater than that?" Much greater, Gail. So two things here. The first thing I really like is this kind of love in the years of cholera kind of thing, that no matter how many years passed, not only he loves her, he's still in love. So it's like nothing has happened, right? Like the intensity of the feeling is still there. But what I find interesting, and I want to ask you about, is the next sentence. So walking through a building is a deeper experience and a deeper feeling for Roark even than Dominique.
Well, I think, first of all, as far as human beings go, Dominique is the love of his life. You know, there's no question about that, I think. And if she were, God forbid, to pass away when he's in his 30s, he can live another 40 or 50 years. He will never love anybody again the way he loves her. So she is, you know, the single most important human being in his universe by far. Having said that, architecture is she's the single most important person, but architecture is the single most important thing. Architecture first, foremost, and always. You know, that's his. Doesn't involve somebody else. That's just him. And when I assume he's talking about his buildings. You know, when he's walking through, you know, the Heller House or the Enright building, you know, or the Aquitania Hotel or the Winans building, or the home he designs for Winans to protect Dominique from the world. It's a great scene, right? Winans hires the only guy in the whole world he needs to be afraid of to build a home, you know, to protect Dominique, so you know, so he doesn't lose her. You know, again, great plot point by Ayn Rand. But architecture first, foremost, and always. This is who Roark is, and it's why Dominique loves him. This is what, you know, why Dominique loves him so much. His soul is just chock-a-block. I like that word. His soul is just chock-a-block with values. He lives, eats, sleeps, breathes architecture. He's so passionate. He's more alive than anybody else. Because this is what Dominique responds to. She knows that she'll be by far the most important person in the world, but she'll always be second to architecture. That's why she loves it.
And you mentioned something interesting, which there are many things in the Fountainhead that relate to the idea of possessiveness. There's this brilliant scene, I don't remember specifically, where Dominic says, "I don't even want to imagine Roark walking in town and people kind of touching him or giving him a packet of cigarettes. I don't want to imagine other people close to him." And then, of course, we have Winans building a castle, literally. So this possessiveness, which today is very politically incorrect, to say I'm possessive of you, I want you only for myself. I think this is there's something very deeply romantic in this idea of possessiveness.
Yeah, I agree. And just thinking there's different forms of valuing, you know. I mean, you could see in parents sometimes the top value in their life is the child, not their career, whatever it might be, the child. You know, and for romantic lovers, very often the top value in their life is the person they love. And then there's the people like Roark who live out the objectivist ethics and the objectivist philosophy, that our most fundamental relationship is with reality, not with society or other people, because we need, you know, we don't live in a Garden of Eden, and we have to, you know, produce in reality. Roark gets that at some deep level, and he's just in love with building in the world. And it's just, if he had to choose, he told Dominique that if he had to choose between the two of them, he'd choose architecture in a heartbeat. There's not even a question to him, but it would put him through hell to lose who is by far the most important human being in his life. So yeah, the idea of possessiveness. I mean, I can understand. I know there are some people who like open relationships, and
I would bring polyamory.
yeah, yeah, and it's been a cliche in France for a long time that a man and a woman are married. They often have a tacit understanding. They don't talk about it, But we have lovers because it gives us variety. We're together for 40 or 50 years because we love each other. We have children together. But there's a certain variety in the diversity of lovers. We do it very discreetly. We don't do it at home, right? Home is for us, and it's just a tacit understanding. I can understand that, but I can also understand the possessiveness of people. Like, you're the most special person in the world, and I want this, a monogamous relationship. I can understand that too. And I think there are legitimate choices. I think there are optional matters in human life, and people can make different choices as long as it's done honestly. Like that. Then I can understand both. I fall more on the monogamous side myself, but I can understand both points of view.
And the last scene, to finish a bit more counterclimactically and not with this kind of volcano of feelings and of kind of sexual tension, we'll move to the bromance between Gale and Roark. And there's this very interesting line that this discussion between Roark and Gale Wynand when they're on the boat. And here's the line that caught my attention. Gale, if this boat were sinking, I'd give my life to save you. Not because it's any kind of duty, only because I like you, for reasons and standards of my own. I could die for you, but I couldn't and wouldn't live for you. And it's this last line that I would want your comment on.
It's the kind of dialogue that only Ayn Rand could write. We really need to appreciate what a great novel this is, what a great novelist Ayn Rand is. Her dialogue is just sui generis. I mean, it's at such a fundamental level. Roark's telling Wynand, you're so important. I love you so much. Second only to Dominique. You're second only to Dominique in the pantheon of human beings in my universe. That I will risk my life for you, and if necessary, I will die to save you. But living for you, I think, means placing something above and before architecture in my life, while I'm alive. But I can't do that. Architecture first, foremost, and always. I think that's what Roark is saying. I can't. I can risk my life for the person I love, but I can't. When I'm alive, I can't give up that which brings the most meaning into my life. Not for anybody. Not even for Dominique. Not for Dominique, not for Gale, not for anyone.
Right. It's kind of related to the question I've asked you. So Gold puts his life first, obviously, but at the same time, so how can you have someone who is the highest value, and you could die for them, but then still your life is the standard value? So it would basically mean that your life would not have a meaning, or would lose much of its meaning without that person. Am I right?
Yeah, it's all about, in the objectivist ethics, it's all about values. What gives life its meaning? I mean, if the KGB or the Gestapo or something like that, controlled the country and they forbade Roark to ever, design a building that their agents followed him around night and day. They couldn't own a T-square or a pencil or a sheet of paper. They wouldn't let him, design. How long before Roark would be ready to jump off a bridge? If he's eternally restricted from living out that which is most important to him. It's about that which gives life meaning. If you lose your life standing up for that which gives life meaning, it's not a sacrifice. But if you give up that which gives life meaning, then your life is meaningless, and it is. So you could risk your life for people you love. I would for my daughter, for for example. But I wouldn't give up. I wanted to be a writer from the time I was a little kid. I wouldn't give that up for anybody or anything.
Right. So these were all the scenes that I wanted to comment. Now we can turn to the audience if someone has a question or a comment, or if there is another scene that I might have missed.
What about that heartbreaking scene, you know, with Keating and Katie at the end?
Well, that's heartbreaking only for Keating, because Katie doesn't. She's basically spiritually dead at that point, no? So for people who don't remember, they meet, and even like Katie, you know, tells him things like, "Oh, you've gained weight, Pete. You know, you need to take care of yourself." And again, he is in that scene. He acts pathetically. So basically, she orders his food. He doesn't say anything. I think in a way they're both spiritually dead.
Katie is. That's part of the heartbreak. What Tui did to her. Sweet girl, good person, honest, you know, good soul, and he crushed it, and he did it deliberately. So that's sad. See a good person crushed like that. But for Keating, and again, this goes to the essence of the objectivist ethics when he tells her, you know, why do they tell us it's easy to be selfish? He says the hardest thing in the world to be selfish, to be really selfish. He says, so the one thing I ever really wanted to do in my life was marry you. And it's unforgivable that I didn't do what I really wanted. You know, it's like I took the two things in life that I love, painting and Catherine Halsey, and I threw them both away. I can't have Catherine now, she's dead. So he tried to go back to painting, his first love. And that's also a heartbreaking scene when he brings his canvases to Roark.
It's too late, Peter.
Yeah. Katie was murdered in effect by Ellsworth Tui. Keating committed suicide, and you know, and it's heartbreaking to see this Hulk, this husk of a person left over after having sacrificed his values. Is life worth living at that point? His life is basically empty for the rest of his life, and they're both dead. You're right; they're both spiritually dead. One was murdered, one committed suicide. Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. Daniel, the mic is yours. You're unmuted.
Hi. There's a quote in the Ellsworth Tui part of the book, part 2, where Dominique has just revealed that she finds Howard Roark attractive, and Ellsworth Tui, so this character Kiki Holcomb, expresses surprise at that, and then Ellsworth Tui starts talking to her about the face and how there's nothing as significant or as eloquent, and you can only really know a person by your first glance and like the style of the soul and all that. What would you guys have to say about that? How much do you agree? And that's on pages 281 to 282, and I posted a link to the quote if it's work. I don't know if you'll remember that quote, but if you do, what are your thoughts about that?
Another brilliant scene by Ayn Rand in a magnificent novel, and I think we should take time out to appreciate what a literary master Ayn Rand is in creating these characters and this plot and these scenes. Yeah, that is a great scene. I agree with you, Daniel. And then the context here, of course, is that this was it was a party. This was right after the Enright House, I think, was right after Roark designed the Enright House, right? And he's there, you know, at the party. He comes because he knows Dominique is gonna. The point, of course, is Kiki Holcomb asks Dominique, you know, what do you think about that new one, you know, that Roark, you know, and she says something like, I don't know how you could deal with that kind of insufferable, you know, egotism. I don't know what there is that's good to say about him, except that he's terribly good looking, if that matters. Kiki Holcomb says, good looking, Dominique. What are you kidding? He's not good looking at all. And Tui, of course, overhears this, and Tui recognizes what Dominique is flummoxed, I mean, at this point, because, and again, this is what shows us what an exquisite human being Dominique is. To her, it's the most casual, offhand, obvious, self-evident remark she can make. Roark's got the face of a god. to her it's obvious, and these other people, they don't see it, they don't get it. How could they not get it? And Tui gets it. Tui understands what Dominique's responding to in Roark, the creativity, the creative genius, the strength of character. He understands, and Tui now knows everything he will ever need to know about Dominique Francon's soul, because she thinks that Roark is terribly good looking, that Roark's got the face of a god. That tells Tui everything he ever need to know about Dominique Francon's soul. It's a great scene. It's a brilliant scene.
Can I talk about Tui on this one? I mean, we disagree on Tui. You say he wants to bring a communist dictatorship. I think he's a nihilist. But anyway,
well, I don't think those two are mutually exclusive.
Yeah, but, okay. But there's what you said made me realize Tui has skills. So I'm not gonna say he's a tragic hero, because he's not a hero. He's a horrible, horrible villain. But we could think in a completely different context and setting that Tui, using these skills, like his oratory skills, his mind, for something good. So he's a man of skill, so to speak. Am I right?
And yeah, he's got a certain level of brilliance. Yes, he's very intelligent. He's very talented. You know what he reminds me of? Going back to their childhood, was Teddy Roosevelt, who became president of the United States. Because Roosevelt in his early years had severe asthma. He was physically frail. He was picked on and everything. But they made very different choices from there. Roosevelt opted for the strenuous life. He's hunting, riding, fighting. Was going to build himself up or die. And Tui rejected that. And he went to the life of power. A power lusting and not building himself up, but tearing others down. Now Roosevelt's a mixed case. He did a lot of bad things, but he did some good things too. In fact, he's the guy I wanted to be president after 9/11, because he's the guy who would have used the full power of the U.S. military to take out our enemies, including the Iranian regime. But anyhow, Tui made a very different choice. But yeah, had he made the kind of choices that Teddy Roosevelt made, yes, Tui could have been a brilliant scholar, writer, educating people, helping actualize their potential like a great teacher does, rather than destroying them. He could really bolster a lot of his students' capacity to self-actualize and self-fulfill, like a good professor, a good rabbi does it. He makes the choice to conquer and destroy, rather than to fulfill himself and thereby help fulfill other people.
Right. So have we got any other scenes that you want to discuss, points, questions, characters, or shall we call it a day, because it was like a lot of sexual and romantic tension, but also strong feelings in terms of friendships, so that's the interesting thing. It's basically the whole spectrum of anything that someone can feel for another person.
I think we should discuss the bromance, as you put it before, because the Roark-Winan relationship is beautiful and ends, very sadly. As a real bromance, not like Trump and Kim Jong-un, right? Which was enough to, when Trump left North Korea, and I know everybody knows I prefer Trump to the Democrats, but even so, when he left North Korea and said the North Korean people love Kim Jong-un, was, oh my God, that sounds like something Obama would have said. I mean, the people in the gulags don't love the dictator. Be that as it may, Roark and Winan is a beautiful. I mean, this is they're like soulmates. They're like spiritual brothers, and I think Ayn Rand is showing us something here. The Roark-Dominique relationship is number one in his life, without a doubt. That's not a surprise. This has been known for thousands of years amongst heterosexuals. The man-woman love relationship would be the most important relationship in your life. But this non-romantic, same-gender love relationship, that's what it is. They love each other. It's not romantic. In fact, they're both hopelessly in love with the same woman. But they love each other, and you see this in Atlas too. With Reardon and Francisco, with Galt, Francisco, Ragnar, with the three of them, and Hugh Axton. You see this kind of love between the, and it's how much meaning this can bring into your life. And at the end, it's so sad when Winand, of course, is crushed by the realization that after Roark is acquitted, Winand is spiritually crushed by the realization that not only did he sell his soul, but he sold his soul needlessly. You don't need to sell your soul to reach success. In fact, you can't reach success by selling your soul. Roark's acquittal shows him on, and he's just devastated. He's crushed. And that letter that Roark wrote, which comes back unopened, but I can't read it without crying. He said, Gail, I know, he said something like, if you come, he says to him, come back. There'll be another chance. If you don't do it, if you don't have the strength to do it enough for yourself, do it for me. Roark says, do it for me. He says, come back. You can see how much Roark loves him, and Winand just. We discussed this once before, right? I don't know if he can't do it, or certainly won't do it. Maybe he can't do it. I'm not sure what Ayn Rand would say on this, on the limits of free will. To be is to be finite. So even free will is finite. I'm not sure if Winand's past the point of no return or not, but certainly he feels like he is. He's 50-something years old. His whole career has been a waste. He's done all these terrible things, and it's all for nothing.
I have experience of. So when I switched from being a Marxist to slowly moving to different directions, I've lost friends, and I've lost a friend who we've been friends since 1991. So after more than 20 years. So it's probably more hard. It's sadder than sometimes even than losing a romantic relationship, because in the romantic you have this, what we said earlier, at least it happened, and it's whereas when you lose a friendship, it's more like the bitter taste. So I think Roark is gonna be really, for the rest of his life, he's gonna think about it, and he's gonna be really sad about that.
Oh yeah. Winand it's a love relationship. It's not romantic, but romance isn't the only type of love. A parent loses a child, it's devastating. And you lose somebody you love. I don't think it'd be as devastating to Roark as if this happened to Dominique, if she were crushed in that way. But it's still very painful. Yeah, this is gonna be a scar, in Roark's soul for the rest of his life. He lost his soulmate, his spiritual brother. What you reminded me of when you talk about friends? I can go to music here. Paul McCartney and John Lennon. I mean, they grew up together. They knew each other since they're at least teenagers, I think, if not before. They were the heart and soul of the Beatles. They did most of the songwriting, although George Harrison was very good. And then, a lot of people blame Yoko Ono for the split up of the Beatles. Now, it's easy to dislike Yoko Ono. She's a communist, for God's sake. I mean, she was a member of the Communist Party in Japan in the 1960s. She should have known better, by then. But she didn't break up the Beatles. John and Paul let it happen. They were, they were friends from the time they were teenagers. They made the Beatles go. They were responsible, and John could have said to her, look, Yoko, you're my wife. I love you. You're the most important person in the world. But Paul and I, make the decisions, for the Beatles. They don't do that. They let her come between them. So she's not responsible. They are. And that split them apart. And, John didn't live, only another 10 years. Paul's still alive, though. And I wonder if that's a scar in his soul that, that he contributed to that, and that breakup with his lifelong buddy. I think they had a relationship similar to Roark and Winand.
Although at some point you say, well, maybe it was not meant to happen, no? But it's like when people choose different values, then, maybe it's not that a big tragedy. But we have like the $1 million question by Betty. We've been discussing about, sex, love, romance. Betty asked the question, in objectivism, what is love?
What is love? Well, love is certainly a positive response to values. I mean, that I think is the broadest thing we could say about love. then there's many different iterations, right? I mean, and it's not just for people, amongst people, you can love your child, you love your lover, you can love your friend, you could love, I was going to say love the president of the United States. I can't say I love Trump, but I would love George Washington to be president, and then you can love all kinds of, I love the Fountainhead. There's all kinds of books and movies that I love. There's all different iterations of love. But I think the broadest catch-all for these different versions of love is it's a positive response to values. You recognize that something is good in your life, it's important in your life, and love is the emotional consequent of it. Love is the emotional concomitant of realizing that this thing or person is of enormous value.
So before we go to Betty, who wants to a live follow-up on her question, Joseph makes the point about Wyman that you cannot work against your values all your life and then expect your soul to remain intact, correct? And then Josh gives us more of a happy ending to the John Lennon, Paul McCartney story by saying that they continued to love each other afterwards and started sharing music again just before John was murdered. So that story had...
I didn't know that. That's good.
More of a happy ending. So Betty, you are unmuted.
I was just wondering, somebody said something a while ago about being willing to die for someone. And I just wondered, since the highest value that we have is our life, how then can I be willing to give my life for someone when the highest value I have is my life? In other words, I can't love you, my romantic partner, any more than I value my highest value, which is my life. So how am I supposed to give my life for somebody? I just wondered if that's a bit of a Hollywood romanticized version of love, because I think realistically, I'm not practically going to give my life for anyone.
That's a good question. Andy.
It's a very good question. But, let me start with an example. And I think we can extrapolate the explanatory principles. So my ex-wife, we adopted a little girl from China who's now 17, not so little anymore. And, I remember Regina saying to me, I throw myself in front of a bus, for that kid, unquote. And I can tell you she means that literally. That's not hyperbole. And that is life the highest value? Well, I mean, life is the opportunity to fill itself with values. If you have values and they're going to be torn away from you, the calculation is what's better. I mean, this may be done in a lightning fast emotional accounting, but what it amounts to is what's better for me, or what's less bad for me. My life continuing in the absence of my child, or my child's life continuing in the absence of mine. And many parents, I think, would agree with Regina that life without the beloved child is so painful that it would simply be better to save the child and lose my life. Life, when you have enormous values and they're subtracted irrevocably, life becomes pain. And there's no way. You can have other children, I suppose, but there's no way to replace that child. I don't think Roark, let's put it this way. If Roark committed suicide, in my hypothetical example before, after being denied any possibility of engaging in architecture, and the best judgment in the moment, best reasoned judgment after days, weeks, months, years of this, that the KGB or Gestapo was immutable, their power is unassailable, their decision is irrevocable, I will never be able to escape or engage in architecture again. I wouldn't blame Roark for committing suicide. I wouldn't be surprised if he committed suicide, or if Ayn Rand did, if she wasn't allowed to write. Life in the absence of the values that make it meaningful is meaningless.
So Betty has a follow-up. So Betty, you're unmuted.
Yeah, sorry, I was referring to romantic love. I agree that if I was the mother of a child, I would willingly give my life for the child, because the circle of life is obviously, that's how life continues. I thought we were talking about romantic love. So if I had a romantic love interest, I wouldn't be willing to give my life for them because I value my life more than a romantic partner.
I can understand that, but we're talking about values that make somebody's life meaningful. So for Roark, even more than the romantic relationship with Dominique is the love affair with architecture. Hopefully, let's put this way, hopefully this person X, let's call him or her, has something in his or her life that gives it great meaning, because we probably know people, very sad cases, that go through life and they're not really in love with anything or anybody, and their life just seems kind of empty.
Could I ask, like the other participants, would you willingly give your life for a romantic partner, not for a child, but for a lover?
Well, I think it depends on, these questions are always contextual. Just how enormously important is this person in my life?
Sorry, I'm wondering if the other participants would give their life for a lover. Is there anyone here that would give their life for a lover?
So Josh says in the comments, yes, if I value them enough. I would say it also depends what it means, give your life. So for example, if they fall from a boat and I think that there's a 5% chance that I would save them and 95% that I would die, if that person I was so in love with that person that my life would have no meaning, I might do it. But Daniel makes a good point. Are we talking about 100% certainty of death? Like, what would that mean? So would I exchange places, for example, before the executioner's squad? To be honest, I haven't got an answer, but I think the way I have it in my mind, like if a big love of my life was kidnapped by Boko Haram and I had the chance of creating a team of missionaries trying to get her back, and it was like a huge risk, I would go for it. But it's very important what Daniel says. Are we talking about 100% certainty of death? I don't know.
Yeah. Can I ask, Josh, what do you mean when you say if you value them?
If my life would be too painful living without them, exactly the same principle as with a child. If the person was of such high value to me that for example, when Nikos just said just now that there's another angle as well, is like how could I live with myself if I hadn't done that as well? Is part of it, would be a big part of that. Like my life, if someone, like my partner Christina right now, she's my fiance, I think I would.
You're hardly alone, Josh. Any number of people have risked their lives and given their lives for their husband or wife.
Absolutely.
And I think you're absolutely right in saying it's the same principles with the child. And it's broader than that. It's the same principle as with architecture or writing. It depends upon what is the highest value in your life. Like for me, and ladies, you may not want to get involved with me, because for me, writing will always be, first and foremost. I'm not the genius that Roark is or Ayn Rand is, but that's my highest value. So I wouldn't give up my life for another human being. But if the state treated me the way, the hypothetical example, the KGB was treating Roark, I very well might, jump off a bridge if they would never, let me write again. If it's the most important thing or person in your life, yes, you do it, and people certainly have.
Josh, if you say you're going to give your life for somebody like your fiance, that's still self-interested. In other words, what you're saying is your fiance makes you feel happy. And so you're preserving her life is preserving your happiness.
Yeah, it's definitely self-interested. It's not a sacrifice. It's definitely an egoistic action. It's value-laden, right? It's not value sacrificing. It's value-laden.
I want to say, rather than saying that you're giving up your life for somebody, you're bargaining or gaining something for your life. So I think that to phrase it to say that I will give up my life for somebody is a bit misleading. I can't give up my life for anybody because it's the highest value I have.
Yeah, I see. So it's not. Yeah. So it's not a sacrifice. I mean, let me give a way, not crude, a simpler example. if my alternative is live under the Third Reich in a concentration camp for the rest of my life, then I don't quite sacrifice my life, because my life will suck anyway. So as you said, it's a bargain in a way. Okay, I don't want, maybe that's not the right term, but it's definitely not a sacrifice. Yes, you don't sacrifice your life. It's the idea that this has so much value for me that my life would have no meaning without that person. So it's not a sacrifice. It's still done under the premise of a selfish, so to speak, value.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Death is not necessarily a sacrifice or a surrender. In certain contexts, death is a release. You know, what you're talking about, that'd be a release from suffering. And similarly for the person who's so in love with fiance, child, career, you know, that life without it would be unrelieved pain. And death is a superior alternative to that. It's a release from that kind of pain.
So, since we're leading the mark of the 2 hours, Razi, do you want to give us the parting words?
Yeah, I want to add on that last point that, Daniel mentioned the context question, which is, you know, is it 100% certainty? What kind of a situation is it where, you know, you would know that you're going to die in order to keep this person alive? So, yeah, you have to go to such examples like Nikos, if, you know, they're kidnapped by Boko Haram, because normally that's not something that we face usually. But what we do face is, you know, risks to our life. And we know this now when, you know, shaking somebody's hand could be risky. But we did that before when we go out and cross the street, or, you know, get on a plane or get in a car, or just walk through a neighborhood that might be dangerous. So we take risks based on whether or not they fit into our, you know, hierarchy of values and where they fit there. And yeah, obviously something that's at the very top, the risks you're willing to take to preserve that value are going to be greater.
And you're right, Razi. Life is terminal, and we take risks every day. Just, you know, I'm gonna get in the car afterwards and go drive and get some lunch. Hopefully some lunatic doesn't smash into me, right?
Yeah, and you know, in the past that would have been much riskier, because you'd have to maybe hunt your lunch as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
So I want to thank both of our speakers. Andy is our speaker. Nikos was
the discussant.
And I want to thank everybody who attended, and apologies again for posting it very late. I'd like to say it's not going to happen again, but I can't guarantee that. We are increasing our output even more than what you've seen so far. More on that in the next week or two. I can tell you what the next two are going to be. So they're not on Meetup right now, but this Wednesday at 7, we will be discussing what's next for the climate alarmists. And the speakers there are going to be Nikos and Brendan O'Neill. And then on Saturday, we will have our Saturday event on psychology with Josh. And yeah, even when I don't post things on Meetup well in advance, you can rest assured that every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday we'll be here at 7, unless there are very unusual circumstances. I think there was one Wednesday that we didn't do, and maybe one or two that the time was a bit different. So, but yeah, this Wednesday it is at 7. Nikos and Brendan will be there, and then Saturday 7 with Josh. So those two are going to happen, and they will be posted on Meetup. So I hope to see you there, and thanks everybody.